what's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. As always, I'm your host, Chris, and this, of course, is the show about all things movies and TV. I got another awesome episode for y'all today. We're going to dive back into Middle Earth with The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers Extended Edition, part 2 of the extended series here at Cinematic Reviews. I'm excited to watch this second movie by Peter Jackson. It's definitely not my favorite of the three, but we'll get into that later down the road with the rankings. But I still really enjoy rewatching this movie with all the action scenes and the battles and the characters, of course, because I love the characters in this trilogy. As a reminder, you can watch the show every week at youtube.com/the cinematic reviews. You can also listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast listening service. Check out the social media pages as well for the show. Follow it. It helps the show grow a lot and get out to the world even better. I make a lot of art for every episode that comes out, including announcements and different things in the movie and TV world as well. And the rankings get put up on there and other cinematic clips and anything else fun that I can think of to go with it. I love movies. That's why I do the podcast. So I love posting anything about movies on social media. So check out those pages. There's a lot of stuff to explore that I put on there. So with that, let's head over to news and reactions. So yesterday it was released that David Fincher's The Social Network will be getting a sequel, and an official title and release date was revealed as well, including some of the cast members. If you're not familiar, David Fincher did a film based on the Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. They called The Social Network. It starred Jesse Eisenberg and Andrew Garfield. I actually reviewed it on the show a few episodes ago, so definitely check out that review at Cinematic Reviews, and check out the movie if you haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a while. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's getting a sequel. It's been rumored that it would be getting a sequel from Aaron Sorkin, who wrote the first film. He is now returning as both writer and director for the sequel, which will be titled The Social Reckoning. It is set to release on October 9th, 2026. David Fincher hasn't been announced as a producer or any kind of involvement with it, so this is Aaron Sorkin's baby, so to speak. This is his project, and I'm very excited for this. He did a fantastic job writing the script for the first movie, and I'm really excited to see what else he can bring to this story. Looking at the cast, we've got Mickey Madsen, who has just won the Oscar for Best Actress in Anora, so she is set to star in this film, alongside Jeremy Allen White, who you probably recognize from Shameless or Hulu's The Bear. He is going to be in there, as well as big-time comedian Bill Burr. It will be in there. And then Jeremy Strong from Succession and The Big Short will be portraying Mark Zuckerberg in the film. So it sounds like we're going to be doing a little bit of a time jump into the world of Facebook, which is very exciting. So stay tuned for more trailers, cast announcements, and anything else that Aaron Sorkin wants to reveal on The Social Reckoning, the sequel to David Fincher's The Social Network. Another bit of news that I wanted to bring up is probably one of the bigger news that I have seen so far in the last few weeks. I don't think I've ever talked about an injury on this podcast before, so this is going to be a first time for the show. Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man / Peter Parker in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has sustained an injury while filming his newest Spider-Man film, Spider-Man Brand New Day. It seems that he was performing a stunt as Spider-Man. One of the cables broke and he did hit his head, causing a mild concussion and cracking open his head a little bit. So he was rushed to the hospital a few days ago. He is, from what I can understand, he is doing well. He is out of the hospital now, but the set has shut down for a couple weeks so that he can recover. So best wishes and prayers to Tom Holland, one of my favorite actors in this kind of generation that's kind of taking Hollywood by storm. So I hope to see him feel healthy enough to film the rest of Spider-Man, because that is one of my most anticipated films of 2026. And then the last bit to do on news and reactions today is I actually have a reaction today, and that is a film that came out a little earlier this year. Let me pull up the release date on that one. It came out back in April. I did not get to see it in theaters. It is on streaming now. I believe it's on HBO Max. I ended up buying it because it is an A24 film, and I absolutely love it. If you haven't figured out what movie I'm talking about, that is Warfare. This is the film from Alex Garland, who has done a bunch of A24 films, including Civil War. This is in the same vein. Warfare centers around a platoon of Navy SEALs that were hunkered down in a building in Iraq. It's based off of a true event that did happen. It stars Will Poulter and Joseph Quinn, and along with some other ones like Cosmo Jarvis, DeFaro Wonatai, I believe is how you say his name. I totally probably butchered that one. But the two biggest stars that come out of this film is probably Will Poulter and Joseph Quinn, who have been taking Hollywood by storm. Will Poulter plays the platoon leader in the film, Eric, and then Joseph Quinn plays another member of the platoon, Sam, who sustained some heavy injuries during that film to his legs. It's a very, very graphic film, so if you aren't into, gore and stuff like that, this won't be the film for you. They get pretty realistic with the wounds to the platoon during this war epic that Alex Garland brings us. But it's got a phenomenal cast. Everybody does a great job at portraying the real life person that they are supposed to in this event that happened in Iraq. And it's a very small, contained movie, and it's very quick. It's only an hour and a half long. It kind of breezes by, but at the same time, it doesn't. You get really locked into it once the chaos unfolds with the IEDs and the wounds that the platoon has to deal with on the spot there with the little bit amount of medical supplies that they have. So it's a very, very intense hour and a half for sure. The first 10-15 minutes is kind of just setting up the atmosphere and giving you some little bit of backstory on this platoon. After that, once the big explosion happens to the platoon, that's when everything just unfolds, and it's just racing to the finish line with action, gore, and some really heartfelt interactions between the members of the different squads that come together to help each other. So it's a fantastic war movie. I love a good military style war movie, especially ones that are based off of real life events. And Alex Garland is great at this. He did a fantastic job with Civil War, which I'm going to have on the schedule for next year to review that movie, because that was one of my favorite movies last year. And he's becoming one of my favorite writer directors for sure. He did 28 Years Later, another film that came out this year, and a bunch of other movies in his filmography. So check out Warfare. It is currently streaming on HBO Max. You can also purchase it on Apple, Fandango at Home, whichever service that you have your digital libraries on. For the popcorn bucket ranking, I give this 5 popcorn buckets. It didn't quite reach that golden popcorn bucket scale, but giving it 5 is still a really good chef kiss to Alex Garland. So it's a fantastic movie. I highly recommend it. It's one of my sneaky favorites for 2025. So definitely check that movie out. That's going to do it for today's news and reactions. Let's head over to our featured film of the day, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, Extended Edition.
What business does an elf, a man, and a dwarf have in the Ritter Mark? Speak quickly!
We track a band of Uruk-hai westward across the plain. They have taken 2 of our friends captive.
Look for your friends, but do not trust to hope. It has forsaken these lands.
We're lost. I don't think Gandalf meant for us to come this way.
He didn't mean for a lot of things to happen, Sam.
I come back to you now, at the turn of the tide. Sauron's forces have begun their attack. He is using Saruman to destroy your people.
They were unarmed. They had no warning.
This is but a taste of the terror that Saruman will unleash. You must fight.
I will not risk open war.
Open war is upon you, whether you would risk it or not.
A new power is rising. Its victory is at hand.
There is an army bred for a single purpose: to destroy the world of men.
You must lead the people to Helm's Deep.
By order of the king, the city must empty.
Where is she? The woman who gave you that jewel.
The alliance between men and elves is over. Our time here is ending. Arwen's time is ending. Let her go.
Where is it?
Just tie him up and leave him. No! You know the way to Mordor.
There will be no dawn for men.
It's the ring. Frodo! It's taken hold of you.
You have the gift of foresight. Tell me what you have seen.
He is not coming back.
The defenses have to hold.
They will hold.
There is nothing for you here. Only death.
There is still hope.
So The Two Towers is the epic sequel to The Fellowship of the Ring. It's part 2 of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Ring trilogy. It came out back in, let me pull up this release date, December 18th, 2002. It won a couple of awards. Let me pull that up as well. Let's see if I can find it. Yes, it won 2 Oscars, and it was nominated for a bunch more. So it won for Best Sound Editing and Best Visual Effects, which it completely deserves. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Art Direction, Set Decoration, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound, as well as getting nominated for a bunch of BAFTA awards, but I won't go into all those. Best Picture, I don't recall the contestants that year, but this probably should have won the Best Picture. Definitely should have won Best Film Editing and Best Sound. The music is incredible. The sound is fantastic on set. But it is well-deserved for the visual effects, which there is a few visual effects. I think most of the CGI happens with the orcs and the Uruk-hai as they attack Helm's Deep, because it's on such a massive scale that you can't get that many extras. You're going to have to incorporate some computer. But Peter Jackson did use a lot of extras and stand-ins where he could to make it as realistic as possible, especially when it came to the orcs, because you got to take advantage of the makeup and all that he uses. And then Best Sound Editing, of course, that's got to win. I'm really surprised it didn't win Art Direction or Set Decoration, because the sets are amazing, and not just this one, but in the entire trilogy as a whole. And then even in The Hobbit, they tried to use practical effects as much as they could. Those ones, they really leaned on the CGI, which is when we get to those movies later on next year, I'll be kind of taking that apart because of the CGI. But the set design in the areas that they use for New Zealand are gorgeous, and they're beautiful. They're really, really well landscaped to how Peter Jackson wanted them. So it's really surprising that they didn't get the award for direction and set decoration. I'd have to look to see who won it that year, but it's really shocking that it didn't win a third Oscar that year. But hey, 2 Oscars is definitely still a really cool milestone for this installment of the trilogy. When we get to the Return of the King on the next episode, that one was nominated for a bunch, and it pretty much won every award that year. And I'm going to talk about that a lot because of that one being my favorite, and it shows you in the Oscars that this was the best of the trilogy. Even though this is what I think is the lesser of the 3, it's still a really, really good movie. I love watching it, and you can't watch the first one and the third one without watching the middle. There's still a lot of meat and potatoes in here. It's just a lot of walking around and characters talking. You really get through the movie just to watch that big battle at Helm's Deep, which is on one of my iconic scenes that we will get to a little later on. But there's still a lot of really good stuff. There's a lot of really cool interactions with Frodo and Gollum, and in another part of the world we have Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli doing their things, and Rohan, and then you have Faramir, who is the brother of Boromir, who we meet in here. It's really really cool that you get a lot of interactions with characters versus like the first movie had quite a bit of fighting mixed in there, and then the third one, of course, is like every other scene is a fight scene or some kind of epic battle, and here it's kind of just filler, so to speak. And I don't want to say that to drag it down, because like I said, it's still a really fantastic movie. It's just when you compare it to the other two, it's just not quite on the same level. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that disagree with me. This is probably a favorite of theirs. I know one of my uncles, this is his favorite of the trilogy, for reasons that are close to him, um, just like many of you probably like that this has got a lot of character development and character interactions and less battle scenes. You get to really just look at the landscape, and that's what a lot of Rohan is with those scenes. Is a lot of looking at the landscape, which is a beautiful beautiful country. I would love to see New Zealand eventually and kind of walk the trail that was taking on during this filming. I think I heard about tours that they do in New Zealand and stuff like that, but it's still a really really good movie, and I can't wait to dive into those scenes. But first, let's kind of go through the cast. A lot of the cast is the same. I'll run through those really really quickly in case you haven't seen part one of the series yet. So you have Frodo Baggins, played by Elijah Wood again. You have Gandalf, played by Ian McKellen. This time, though, he's Gandalf the White, not Gandalf the Grey. Samwise Gamgee, played again by Sean Astin. Pippin, played by Billy Boyd. Merry, Dominic Monaghan. Aragon is Viggo Mortensen, who is my absolute favorite in this trilogy. You have Legolas, played by Orlando Bloom. John Rhys Davies plays Gimli, the adorable and funny dwarf in the group of people. Then you have Andy Serkis coming in as Gollum. We got little glimpses of Gollum in the first film, but it's in Two Towers where we really get to find out the backstory of Gollum and hear him talk. And there's some really interesting facts too. I guess I can jump into those with Andy Serkis. So I have a couple of fun facts. I think I have like five, but I'll touch on the Andy Serkis one since we're talking about him right now. So he drank bottles of what they called Gollum juice on set to keep his throat, lubricated during his performance. Because if you remember the movie, he's got that really unique Gollum sound when he is Gollum, and then he has a different kind of voice when he is Smeagol. And that was all him. That wasn't like dubbed or audio edited. That was all Andy Serkis doing the voicing. It was a mixture of honey, lemon, and ginger. And then he also based his, those desperation and craving scenes with Gollum. He based those off of withdrawals from heroin addicts, which I thought was a really interesting thing to do. And then another one, kind of speaking on a specific scene, that scene where Gollum is eating the fish when Frodo and Faramir come down there. That is actually Andy Serkis chewing on a fish-shaped lollipop. So if you're kind of curious how they filmed that eating the raw fish scene, it wasn't actually a fish. It was a fish-shaped lollipop, which I thought was really cool. But Andy Serkis is fantastic. Like this is the role that I will remember him as, and probably everybody else. I know now he's done like Planet of the Apes and he's Alfred in Batman, but this is where I will always remember him from, and this is the very beginning of his awesome career. He is fantastic as Gollum and both Smeagol. If you remember, he has a split personality in there. You have Gollum, who is the kind of more aggressive one who really wants the ring, and Smeagol, who's kind of becoming friends with Frodo in a way. So he's kind of torn between himself, literally, and his newfound master, Frodo Baggins. So the way Serkis portrays Gollum is really Oscar worthy stuff. He did a lot of mocap stuff for this movie. I think originally Peter Jackson was going to have either like a stand-in or some kind of puppet with Gollum. But when he met Andy Serkis, the story goes is that he really enjoyed Andy's enthusiasm and effort that he put into the performance, that he wanted Serkis to actually do the motions as Gollum in the mocap suit and all that stuff. So, and then he ends up bringing that over to the Planet of the Apes series that he does as Caesar. So that's really cool that he got to literally become Gollum instead of just doing voiceover work for a few hours and then getting a paycheck. He actually got to be on set interacting with the other actors. So I thought that was a great choice on Peter Jackson's part. We also get introduced to Theoden, who is the king of Rohan. He's played by Bernard Hill. Theoden is an interesting character. He's going to pop up a lot in the changes from the book to the movie, because they did change his character quite a bit for this. But Bernard Hill is a really fantastic Theoden. He's got that really unique voice that I really enjoy. You know, he has the very iconic line, "So it begins," and "I know your face." He does a really good job, especially when he is the corrupted version of Theoden by Saruman, where he's got the wrinkled skin and the gray hair, and he's like so weak and he can't even talk. Bernard Hill did a fantastic job as Theoden. I love it. I'll talk about him more in a little bit when we get to the changes from the book to the movie. And then he's got a pretty big role in the third movie. So I want to kind of save a little bit of my takes for him in the third episode of the series. Then we also get, this is kind of a tricky one. They kind of set her up as Aragorn's love interest, but he still is in love with Arwen, of course, from Rivendell. But we got Eowyn, played by Miranda Otto, who is the niece to Theoden. She is kind of like his caretaker and / like bodyguard, because she has a lot of sword training that not a lot of people know. But she's really good. I remember when this movie came out, there was a lot of backlash behind her character, because they're like, oh, they're trying to get rid of Liv Tyler and they're trying to replace her with this Arwen gal. They're trying to tempt Aragorn, who's like a fan favorite character. I really love her portrayal, and she took a lot of heat for that, and I don't think it was well deserved. She is part of the story that they kind of become friends and they get to know each other and become allies. So it's really cool. It just really baffled me that was actually a thing people were really mad about when this movie came out. I remember hearing about it quite a bit. So, but I think Miranda Otto did a fantastic job. Again, she is in the third one. She has a really big role in the third movie, so I kind of want to save my takes on her for sure with the Return of the King. We also get introduced to her brother, Eomer. I hope I'm saying these name right. They all sound so similar together, especially when they're related. But Eomer is played by Carl Urban, who, if you don't know who Carl Urban is, you're living under a rock. Right now he's playing Butcher in the Boys series on Amazon. He's going to be playing in the Mortal Kombat 2 movie. He's been in a bunch of other things over the years. But I think this is really the first movie that I remember seeing him in and being really attached to as one of my favorite underrated actors. He doesn't get a whole lot to do in here, even though he actually replaced the character, and I'll get into that more in detail with the changing from the book segment. But Carl Urban is fantastic. I love what he does in here. He's very stoic. He's very in your face, honest with you, and you can tell that he really loves this country. So him getting banished was a real bummer, because all he ever did was try to, protect his sister, protect his king, and do what's right for his country. So I think he's a very underrated character in this trilogy. Speaking of underrated characters, I also think Faramir, the brother of Boromir, is very underrated. He's played by David Wenham. He hasn't been in a whole lot of stuff that I've seen. I think the only thing that comes to mind off the top of my head is he's also in 300, the Zack Snyder Spartan movie. He's the narrator of that movie where he, loses an eye. But Faramir is where I really recognize him from. Everything. I know he's been in a bunch of movies since. I could probably pull up his IMDb just to see if he was in there. But for the life of me, I can only think of 300. But I know he's been in a bunch of stuff that I have seen. Let me pull up here when. So he's in The Lord of the Rings, 300. Oh, he was in Van Helsing. He played Carl. How dare I forget about Carl in Van Helsing? That I feel really ashamed for that. What else was he in? Peter Rabbit, never saw that. The Wall, I don't think I've seen that either. So really, yeah, he appeared in the sequel to 300. Oh, he was in Guardians of the Gahul, another Zack Snyder film. He must have voiced one of the owls in there. And then he did a bunch of voice recording for the games, of course. Yeah, that's another thing too. I didn't really mention that on the last episode because I don't really recall playing a Fellowship of the Ring game. But I do remember playing the Two Towers game a lot, and then the Return of the King game, which I'll talk about on the next episode. But that game is one that my brother and I just played constantly on the GameCube. For all you younger kids out there, the GameCube was one of the Nintendo systems where it looked like a cube. I know that might have been before some of your time if you're listening to this, but yeah, these Lord of the Ring games were really fun. They actually had scenes from the movie where they needed to be, so it was almost as if you were watching the movie while also being a part of the movie. Because when the fight scenes came in, you felt really immersed. I really wish they would remaster those games. I love those a lot. But back to the Faramir topic. Like he's really good in here. He's the brother of Boromir, like I said. Frodo and Sam and Gollum end up meeting him. And then they get taken to Osgiliath. But he's really cool. You could tell in that deleted scene with Boromir that he is very underappreciated by both his country and his father. You know, Boromir is kind of this golden child to his father, and Faramir is kind of just the second born disappointment. And it's really cool to see Sean Bean protect his brother, where in the first movie, all we really see Sean Bean is like, oh, I need the ring. Why are we not taking this ring from this little hobbit? We need to take it to Gondor. Where this deleted scene, which I really wish would have been in the original cut, because it's such a really good scene. You show the human being that was Boromir. You know, he had a family. He wanted to honor his country. He wanted to do the best he could for his father, and he wanted to, you know, show the world that his brother is really cool. Because like that moment where, you know, their father comes in unexpectedly and it's like, oh, where's the hero Boromir? And Boromir's like, no, this was actually Faramir, Dad. Like he actually succeeded. No, who cares about Faramir? He's a disappointment. You're the hero. And it's just really disappointing. We'll get more of their father in the third movie, of course, because he's one of my most least favorite characters in this trilogy. But Faramir is definitely underrated, and I love David Wenham's portrayal of him. We also get introduced to Wormtongue, that slimy little bugger. He is played by Brad. I'm going to really butcher this. Dourif, I think is how you say it. He is kind of the voice of Saruman in Rohan. He is this really pale and slimy, creepy looking motherfucker who just really wants power, and he will do anything that he can to take it. Whereas he, you know, brainwashes Theoden into kind of running Rohan how he wants to. So, and Brad does a really fantastic. He's only in a few scenes, but he does have a really important scene at the very beginning of the third movie. But he does a really good job of being that little creepy, slimy mofo that is Wormtongue. And then, of course, we get Saruman returning with Christopher Lee. He's not in it as much as the first movie, but he does play a really pivotal role because he is the one that sends the Uruk-hai onto Rohan and Helm's Deep. So that kind of wraps up the cast. Like I said, a lot of returning members with a few, you know, new ones. We do get some scenes with Elrond, played by Hugo Weaving, and Arwen, played by Liv Tyler. You get some voiceover work from Kate Blanchett, who played Galadriel. But these are the main classes. Cast of the movie. Let's dive into some of the iconic scenes, since I kind of touched on that a little bit. So the first one I got on my list is Aragorn tracking down Merry and Pippin's movements. That's a really, really cool scene. It stands out in my mind as a scene that I recognize with this movie, where they're tracking Merry and Pippin after they were stolen from the Uruk-hai at the end of the first movie. You know, Legolas and Gimli are just beside themselves. They see these burning bodies of Uruk-hai, and they see the little hobbit belt on top of the pile. So they're like, oh my God, the hobbits are dead. But then Aragorn's kind of like, a hobbit lay there. and he follows their little footsteps. He sees the rope that they cut on the knife, and it was really cool how they filmed it too, because as Aragon is tracking the movements, we get flashbacks of what actually happened, of, you know, Pippin almost getting stepped on by a horse and them running underneath that horse, and the orc chasing them into the forbidden forest, and all that stuff. So that was a really cool scene. It really shows you how awesome Aragon is with his hunting skills and his smarts and his kind of worldliness that he has with them. It's really, really spiritual kind of too, watching him track them. The next scene I have is Gandalf breaking Saruman's grip over Theoden. This is a really cool one. And a lot of it's because of the quotes. You know, Gandalf speaking to Saruman through Theoden. I thought was really cool. But it's how it really starts, where Wormtongue's like, I told you to take the wizard's staff. Like, I love the script going into this with the dialogue and all that. And the action, you know, the classic scene of Gandalf, you know, whipping off the gray cloak to reveal that he is Gandalf the White and not the gray. And it's just really a shining light that it even pushes Theoden back in his chair. And then we get, you know, Saruman speaking through Theoden, Gandalf speaking back, and he does, you know, a big tap on the head with the staff, and we see Theoden fly back in his chair, but at the exact same time, we see Christopher Lee as Saruman fly back into his castle at the same time. It's really cool, really awesome how they filmed it. In the background, you know, you see Legolas punching people in the face. You got Gimli trying to do his, and you got Aragorn punching people in the face, holding them back so that Gandalf can save their king. It's a really awesome scene. Then I have Gollum, Frodo, and Sam walk through the Dead Marshes. Now, I like this because of the set. And this set is really, really cool. I'm going to touch on fun facts again, because there's a really cool fun fact about this. So, the Dead Marshes is what it's called. Was actually a water-filled parking lot, and it's the same one that doubled for outside the Mines of Moria in the Fellowship of the Ring. So I thought that was really cool. So the next time you watch that scene, just imagine that dead marsh is actually just a parking lot. It's really cool how they were able to transform that into this really disgusting but really cool dead marsh, and that's really why I think they should have won, you know, set decoration. It was just still baffles me that they didn't win that, because those dead marshes were such cool thing to see. So we got them walking through the marsh, and the big scene here is, you know, Frodo looking at the bodies, even though Smeagol says, no, don't look at them. It kind of like pulls him in, and the spirits around him, and that's kind of where the CGI comes in too. Are pulling Frodo down, but Sam and Gollum end up pulling him out. I thought that was a really cool scene. Then we get probably one of the first big action scenes, where we got the warg attack on Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and the people Rohan as they are walking to Helm's Deep in refuge. The wargs are really cool. They're like these wolf dog looking things, and these goblin like creatures are riding them, and they attack the people. We get that really cool scene where Aragorn's fighting one. His hand gets stuck on the side of the warg, and it drags him across the cliff, and everybody thinks he's dead. But nope, he ends up coming off the shore. His horse finds him, and he comes, and it's the gift that everybody does, where he comes in soaking wet. He pushes the doors open in the castle of Rohan, and he's just standing like a badass, like, yeah, I'm not dead, I'm here. But the warg attack is really cool. A lot of cool action. I like the design of the wargs. You know, those are really cool. And the goblins, they're a little bit different than what we've seen before. They still got like the pointy nose, but they're a little more paler, and they're a lot more skinnier, and their voices are really, really high pitched, but they're really, really cool. I already mentioned the other one, but the extended Boromir scenes on my list for iconic scenes. Of course, that one is you're only going to see in the extended edition. I really wish they would have included that in the theatrical, because I think it's a really good backstory for Faramir. And Sean Bean, of course, I'm going to always side with more Sean Bean. He's fantastic. And then the big Helm's Deep battle. That's another one on there. A lot of CGI in this, but a lot of practical effects as well. I love the look of Helm's Deep. I love how the elves come in to help. So you have elves, you have men, you even have one dwarf fighting all these, 10,000 Uruk-hai or whatever it is that they were saying. But it's really, really awesome scene. One of the best battle scenes that I've probably ever seen in my life. I know you can make the argument of like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, but this is what you kind of watch the first, 2 hours of the movie for. so you can get to this huge battle. And there's some more fun facts that I'll talk about this. So the Battle of Helm's Deep was edited down from 20 hours of footage. So can you imagine? There's 20 hours of this battle. It was shot over a 4-month period with a rain machine batting down onto the cast for that entire time. All the extras got free t-shirts to commemorate the experience in the rain. I believe I also saw one where in the 3 months, or the 4 months, excuse me, most of that was at night. I think there was like a couple weeks to a month where they're in the daylight, and that was just for the scenes where they're setting up for the battle, and then at the end when Gandalf and Eomer come in with the army of Rohan to help them. So really awesome battle. You get that really cool scene with Legolas and Gimli, counting how many kills they get, and then that carries on into Return of the King. But that's really cool because you get that wide shot too, where you just hear Gimli going 17, 18 as he's just hacking everybody to death. So it's really cool. And the elves that come in too, you can tell that they are friends of Aragorn. I need to find what his friend's name was. It was like, I know I looked it up. It was Haleth. Uh, they seem to have some kind of relationship. I'm sure the book goes in depth more, but the movie kind of insinuates that they knew each other from a past time because they're like embraced each other as really good friends. And it's just really, really cool I think it still would have been a cool battle if it was just the people of Rohan, but mixing in the elves with their cool armor and the swords and the arrows just really make this battle even better. And Bernard Hill, who plays Theoden, like I said, he even shows his really cool swordsman skills and all that, but you're really watching Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn just fight off thousands and thousands of Uruk-hai on this big wall that eventually blows up, and that's a really cool effect with Aragorn flopping down on the ground, being a little disoriented, and trying to fight his way back up to the castle. Then eventually the Rohan people have to go back in and kind of regroup, and then you get that really cool moment where Aragorn's like, right out with me, let's go out this swinging and instead of hiding in this building. So Theoden ends up agreeing. They all rush out of there at the same time. Gandalf and Éomer, like I said, come down the hill, because Gandalf says those really iconic lines, wait for me on the 5th day, look to the east, and he will come and rescue him. Well, sure enough, it was the 5th day. He looked, and they came from the east. So it was like a really get hype moment in the theater when we saw Gandalf pop up on that hill, and then Éomer comes around him, and they have all those soldiers behind him. They come crashing down. It's a really cool scene where Gandalf raises his staff, and the light blinds the Uruk-hai, and they just mow over them with the horses. It was a really cool get hype moment in the theater watching it. So Helm's Deep is probably my favorite, hour-long section of this movie. It's really awesome and really, really well done. Then I have the 2 more scenes. The Ring Wraith are flying on their little dragon things. They attack Osgiliath looking for the ring, and you get that really cool moment between Frodo and the Witch King, who is a really big part of the 3rd movie, and I'll talk about him quite a bit in that episode. But we get this really cool face-off, and Frodo's kind of tempted to give him the ring this time so that he can relieve himself of his burden. Sam ends up coming in and tackling him to prevent him from giving that ring over, and the Faramir's people are able to kind of fight off the ring race for now. But that was a really cool moment. That's why I got him in there. I just remember that shot of Frodo kind of looking down over the ledge, and you get the ring race kind of floating up in front of him slowly with the flapping of the wings. It was a really, really awesome moment. And then the last one I have is, I kind of touched on it already, was Gandalf and Éomer coming to the aid of everybody at Helm's Deep. It was really awesome with Gandalf with the shining light and all that. So let me look to see if I have any other facts I didn't touch on. Looks like Bernard Hill, played Theoden, spent up to 9 hours in makeup to become the aged version of Theoden. That was really cool to know. I think that was the only one. I think I touched on the rest of them. So let's get to favorite quotes, and then we'll jump into those changes from the books, because there were some really interesting ones that I found. So let me pull up these ones here. So the famous quotes: "Don't tell the elf This is from Gimli. I love that scene where him and Aragon kind of go out the side door and they're going to jump in, try to surprise these Uruk-hai that are batting down the main gate on the bridge. So they look over, Gimli's like, I can't make the distance. You're going to have to toss me. And Aragon's like, what did you just say? He goes, I can't make the distance. You got to toss me. And then before Aragon tosses Gimli, he's like, don't tell the elf. And Aragon responds, not a word. Kind of like really showing how loyal and honest Aragon is. So I get a chuckle out of that line from Gimli. There's quite a few Gimli ones that I found, and we'll run through those when I get to them. This one from Legolas, shall I describe it, or would you like me to find you a box? As Gimli is, he's on the short side, he's a dwarf, so you can't really see over the wall that they're standing on. So he's hopping up and down. He's like, what's going on out there? And that's where Gimli says that, or Legolas says that line, shall I describe it to you, or would you like me to find you a box? And then Gimli just chuckles. So I love Legolas and Gimli's a friendship, how they're back and forth, they're just giving each other crap. A lot of the trilogy is really fun. I got a couple here from Theoden. No parent should have to bury their child. I mean, 100% agree. That is the worst thing to experience in the world, I'm sure. And then now for Wrath, now for Ruin, and the Red Dawn. This is what he yells as they rush outside for one last push on the Uruk-hai. This one from Gandalf. The Battle of Helm's Deep is over. The battle for Middle-earth is about to be beginning. So this is the last line of the second movie leading into the third, kind of foreshadowing like this big epic battle where Sauron's about to come. And it gets you really, really hyped. This is another one from Gimli. This new Gandalf is more grumpy than the old one. I just chuckle at that. It's true you don't see many dwarf women. In fact, they are so alike in voice and appearance that they are often mistaken for dwarf men. This is Gimli talking to Eowyn. And Aragorn whispers, it's the beards as he does that, making fun of the dwarf women because they have beards, so they look like the men. I thought that was really funny. They put quite a bit of humor in this second one. Theoden, so it begins. This is the famous GIF that a lot of people send. I send it all the time, where Theoden's kind of like standing out there stoic at Helm's Deep, looking out to the Uruk-hai, and it starts raining, and then that's when he says, so it begins. Smeagol, my precious, probably the most quoted line from this trilogy is Gollum speaking, my precious, my precious. And then the last quote I got here is from Gandalf. All our hopes now lie with two little hobbits somewhere in the wilderness. Speaking of Sam and Frodo. So really, really awesome quotes to end the second movie. Then we'll jump into the changes from the book to the film. I found some really interesting ones. I really need to read these books. I can't wait to read them finally. The first one. Now, again, please correct me if I'm wrong about these changes. I cross-referenced them with multiple sources. I was able to find like 10 that I found in multiple sources. So I'm pretty sure that this is accurate, but please, reach out to me on social media or whatever. I know my dad's going to be watching this episode. I'm sure he's going to tell me if I screwed up or not. So these are the 10 that I for sure think and know that these are changes because I found them in multiple sources. So Theoden, when he's under Saruman's spell, this actually doesn't happen that way in the book. It's more of a persuasion and poor counsel from Wormtongue. It's not actually a spell. Peter Jackson changed it for the movie so you can actually see it be a spell for Gandalf to break. In the in the book, it's more just Theoden reacting to the death of his son and just receiving poor counsel from Wormtongue during this really dark and emotional time for Theoden. So it's not actually a spell in the book. It's more just of persuasion from Wormtongue. Then we have Éomer's role, who's played by Carl Urban. This is actually a lot of the stuff that he does in here is by a character named Erkenbrand, I think is how you say it. He is actually a big part of Rohan's success in the book during the War of the Ring. I think Peter Jackson, if I remember right in the research, wanted to consolidate a lot of characters because there's just too many. The studio only gives him so much time of the movie. So he took upon himself to just kind of take Éomer and just kind of wrap him up with this other character. So a lot of what Éomer does in the book is actually Erkenbrand does it in the book, especially during the war and the Battle of Helm's Deep and all that. So Gimli's humor, he's actually more serious in the book. This was a change for Peter Jackson in the movie, just for him to be kind of a comic relief, but he's actually way, way more serious in the book than he is in the movie. Helm's Deep / Theoden as a leader. So, like I kind of hinted at before, Theoden's completely different in the book than he is in the movie. So in the book, he actually sends the people to a place called Dunharrow, I think is what it's called, instead of Helm's Deep. So basically, just to kind of simplify it a little bit and kind of get to my point here, from the research, it sounds like Theoden was a much, much better leader in the book than he was in the movie. The movie kind of sees him as kind of incompetent and not sure what to do. It's his idea to go to Helm's Deep when Aragorn's like, and I think even Gandalf, remember, right? It's like, no, you can't go to Helm's Deep. You got to hold your ground here. In the book, Theoden's like spot on a leader. He's like one of the best leaders in the book. He's like, we're not going to Helm's Deep. We're going to this Dunharrow, and we're going to wait it out there. So he's just a much better leader in the book. Faramir towards Frodo and Gollum. So this is kind of how he treats them. In the book, he treats them much better. Specifically Frodo and Gollum. In the movie, you can kind of tell that he's a little suspicious and kind of an arrogant a-hole to them. In the book, Faramir's like one of the... It's a lot like Aragorn in the movie, where he's like the most loyal and heroic, stoic figure. He's a huge part in the book, from what I'm understanding, and they changed it quite a bit to where he's kind of an a-hole to Frodo and Gollum when he interacts with them first. So I thought that was a really interesting change to make, where you change the entire personality, essentially, of a character in a movie. Another change was how the Ents joined the war. In the movie, of course, you remember Merry and Pippin, they try to persuade them. They have that little Ent council, and then eventually they join the war against Saruman. They didn't need any persuasion in the book. They were like hot and ready to go to take on Saruman. So I thought that was a really interesting change too. Some of the heroic lines that Aragorn says actually is what Theoden says. I have an example here. Like the line when Aragorn's like, ride out with me, let's go take these guys one more time. Actually, Theoden says a line like that, and the line reads this in the book: "Will you ride out with me then, son of Arathorn? Maybe we shall cleave a road, or make such an end as will be worth a song." So Aragorn kind of took over a lot of the spotlight from Theoden as far as like being this heroic leader. In the book, a lot of it was Theoden. So I thought that was a really interesting choice to make in the movie. Another one from Faramir, being tempted by the ring. As in the movie, you can kind of tell that Faramir was kind of a little bit tempted at the ring when he saw it around Frodo's neck. In the book, he is much more resistant to the ring. He kind of back to that point that I made earlier, where he's like the most heroic and stoic and loyal person possible. He was never really like tempted by the ring at all. Very similar to Aragorn was never tempted by the ring in the movie. So they kind of pushed a lot of heroic stuff onto Aragorn. I wonder if I research it more, if Peter Jackson really, really loved the Aragorn character. He's like, I want him to be the main hero of this movie. So that was an interesting one as well. I got a couple more here. Saruman's death actually happens in The Return of the King in the deleted scene. If I remember right, the theatrical doesn't show it. In the extended edition, it does. It shows Saruman dying. So I kind of spoiled that there if you've never seen Return of the King. But in the book, he actually dies in the Two Towers at the very end. So that's kind of like a bridge into it. Whereas the third movie opens up with him dying. Jackson, I guess, originally cut it out, but then decided to include it into The Return of the King as the lead scene. So I think you really need to have Saruman's death. From my research, it sounded like a lot of fans were really upset that he left out Saruman's death at the end of Two Towers. So he quickly, added that into The Return of the King as a deleted scene. Because as you remember, and I kind of mentioned this last episode, all three of these movies were filmed at the same time. So once word got out that Saruman's death wasn't in Two Towers, he quickly went and filmed that and included it into Return of the King. And then the last one I have is Shelob's Lair. This is a pretty big one, and I was really surprised about this. So now, if you've seen the Return of the King, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, this is probably going to confuse you a little bit. But so Frodo, Sam, and Gollum end up into Shelob's Lair in the Return of the King. That actually happens at the end of the Two Towers. That's kind of the bridge into Return of the King is Frodo, Gollum, and Sam going into Shelob's Lair, fighting the giant spiders. All that is at the end of the Two Towers. So I think Peter Jackson, if I remember right in the research, he wanted to save that for the third movie because there's just so much stuff packed into Two Towers that he's like, okay, we're just going to kind of move that into the third movie, which is funny because that Shelob Lair scene, in my opinion, makes the third movie superior to the other two because it's such an awesome scene. It would have been really interesting to see the Two Towers movie end with that spider interaction, but that actually happens in the book in the Two Towers, so that was really cool as well. So those are the big changes that I could find in the book. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones. Those are the ones that I could confirm in multiple sources because I don't want to get, this is such a huge franchise. I don't want to misspeak or add a turn. So I wanted to at least give you some of the changes that I could verify because I haven't read the book. I'm hoping to get to the books next year on audio or something, but I'm very excited to read the books because some of those changes are pretty surprising, especially the Saruman death and the Shield's Lair actually happening in Two Towers. That's really cool. So, but yeah, I love the Two Towers, even though I keep saying this, it's the lesser of the three. In my opinion, it's my least favorite of the three, but that doesn't take it away from anything. It's a really fantastic part two of the trilogy, one of the best trilogies ever made, next to Star Wars and Indiana Jones and some of the other big ones. But absolutely love it. I'm excited to now watch the third movie after watching this one because it's a really cool bridge into the Return of the King. It gets you really, really hyped for that epic conclusion of this really awesome story. And I love rewatching this trilogy. I need to watch it every year now. I think it's usually about 2 or 3 years in between when I watch them. But I think this is going to be a new tradition where I watch these every year, and then hopefully I can get to the books and really become a giant, Lord of the Rings nerd like a lot of people are. Very similar to what Harry Potter. I love the Harry Potter movies. I read all the books, and I want to be on that same level as Lord of the Rings. So super excited. So if you haven't seen the Two Towers, definitely check it out. It's really, really awesome. So let's wrap up like we always do. Head over to the ranking segment, and I'll give my popcorn bucket scale for the Two Towers. All right, so we've got the glorious popcorn bucket scale for the Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers Extended Edition. You can probably guess what I'm going to say, but it is the golden popcorn bucket. This trilogy is fantastic. Rankings aside, I'll get into the ranking of the movies on the next episode in that segment. But the Two Towers is still a golden bucket worthy movie because of the scenery, the music, the cast, the action. It's just a really, really, really well made movie. And I can't give it any lower than the golden bucket, even though the Fellowship of the Ring and the Return of the King are above it in the rankings. It's still on the same kind of tier, so to speak. It's a golden bucket worthy movie. So that is my ranking for the movie. That is a review of the Two Towers. I hope you enjoyed it. Go back and check out the Fellowship of the Ring episode. And then we'll do the Return of the King next time for the epic conclusion of the extended series here on Cinematic Reviews for the Lord of the Rings. Later, everyone.